The Radio Forest Podcast.
Craig Gass.
I'm so happy to be back. There's so much going on.
How you been?
I've been doing okay. I mean, on the one hand, I went through this really tough thing where I was with my mom for the last few months that she was alive. She passed away. Not a good way to sell a comedy show. But I've been talking about it a lot on stage because there's comedy there for sure. My mom loved gossip more than anyone I've ever met in my life. And the last thing she said to me before she passed away, and this is not a joke, this is the last thing she said to me. I was driving her to a doctor's appointment. It was very weak. She was suddenly lifting her head up and going, like she needed to say something to me. And I turned on the radio and I said, "What's wrong?" And I'm quoting. She said, Did you see that Tom Brady and Giselle are getting divorced?"
Mom,
is this a Make-A-Wish? What are we like? And I said, "Do you think you have a chance?" And she went, "Oh God, I would never." And I went, "All right, whatever. Turn the radio back up." But
That's
yeah,
funny.
But there's comedy there, and I've been working on that during the show. But yes, I am on what is I'm calling the "Where Have You Been" tour. And we're making a stop into Boise at the Lounge at the End of the Universe this weekend. This will lead up to my first ever arena tour that I'm doing, opening for Russell Peters. We're doing Australia, New Zealand, and some of those arenas I've been to see concerts. So I'm really excited to get to some of those venues. But it's all new material, with the exception of the end of my show. There's a piece of comedy I've been working on that I know you're familiar with, and it's an ever-evolving thing because there's layers that continue to be added, which is a comedy piece I've been working on called "I Think Gene Simmons Is Going to Kill Me."
Yeah, I love that.
And that's and I have some recent developments, which is Paul Stanley and I were both part of a charity event a few weeks ago, where he again brought up how much he hates my impression of him, and he asked me to do the impression. There's two Paul Stanleys. There's offstage Paul Stanley, where I've heard him say in an interview where somebody said, "Why is Kiss so great?" And Paul Stanley responded by saying, "You know, a lot of bands are envious of Kiss. I'm even envious of Kiss." And I was like, man, that is so much confidence. I love that. And then there's onstage Paul Stanley, where I actually heard him say, on stage in Las Vegas, I heard him say, "All right, people, now listen. You know, I know this town, Las Vegas, is known for its buffets. And I can tell you right now after this show, I see a lot of people in the front row that I really want to eat." And then he started fixing his hair, and I go, "What the hell are you talking about?"
What is he doing?
Same show, 2 months later, Madison Square Garden. I bring a bunch of comedians with me to come backstage to the show. I brought Jim Norton, Jeff Ross, and Steve Byrne to go backstage to the show. And I everyone that I know that works with Kiss, I stop them and go, "Hey, were you listening in Vegas when Paul Stanley said he was going to eat the front row?" And 3 different guys that work for Kiss said, "Did you hear what he said in Omaha?" And I said, "No." 3 different guys said, "Did you hear what he said in Omaha?" Apparently on stage in Omaha, Paul Stanley said, "All right, people, now listen. You know, I know this town, Omaha, Nebraska, is known for its Angus beef. And I can tell you right now after this show, I'm going to want to sink my teeth into some meat." And the whole crowd went, "What?"
Okay.
And he goes, "Wait a minute, now hold on. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about a thigh or a rump roast." And the crowd went, "What?" And apparently the road crew is behind the stage tuning the guitars going, "What the hell's he doing up there?" Like, they had no idea. So when I see Paul Stanley at this event in Detroit a few weeks ago, he makes me do the impression of him, and he goes, "You make me sound like I own a hair salon in Long Island." And I was like, wow.
That's dead on, actually.
That's dead on.
That's who you are.
I started doing it on stage. I was like, "Hey, come into my seat. Have a blowout. Let's do it. Let me do your tips."
That could be a whole skit.
That's a total skit. My God. So, yeah, I've been, for those of you who don't know, I am a voice guy. I am known for doing impressions. Always been able to do any voice that I hear. And it's mainly because of how I grew up. My whole family is deaf. Not a joke. It's a true story. My mom, my dad, and my sister are deaf. But I always hate how serious it gets when I say that. Like, it's people always tense up. Most people will tense up. I think I've told you when I opened for Metallica
Lars.
Lars said that thing to me. It's the most opposite of tensed up when he goes, Lars introduced me to his band and said, "Hey, man, this is Craig. This is the guy who does all the voices, and check it out. His whole family is retarded." I go, "They're not retarded. They're deaf. What are you talking? Can't say that, dude. You're messing up my story." But yeah, growing up in a deaf family, I couldn't learn how to talk for my family. I learned how to talk by copying all the voices I heard on TV. And so I've always been able to mimic any kind of voice that I hear. Never got an accent from the Bronx.
Has that continued? Can you still do that? Can you still take a little while to pick up someone's voice?
Yes. I'm working on the Howard Stern Show again for the first time in 20 years. And Howard gives me homework assignments, voices to learn, and which I've been wanting to do for years, to get more homework assignments from him. I got an email. "Hey, can you do Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy?" And they said, "Yeah." And I went, I used to do a lot of coke, so how hard can it be? And it's not that hard. It's just that Minnesota. "Hey, everybody, it's Mike Lindell. I used to smoke crack cocaine. Now I'm clean and sober. But listen, you got to go to the lounge at the end of the universe this weekend. Please, I'll let you shave my pillows." I don't know, whatever. But whatever that is, it wasn't that hard to do. Right now, I've been working on this. Howard and I are both obsessed with O.J. Simpson, because O.J. Simpson is the one guy who seems to be having a good life throughout the pandemic.
He's having a blast.
He really is. He's the only one golfing, just not a care in the world, and his videos are always of him on a golf course.
Hey, Twitter world, something like that.
Hey, Twitter world, yeah, and every once in a while a OJ-ism will slip in, and you can see he's just not right. And you know what bothers me about him?
I can take a guess. Sorry.
I agree with a lot of what he has to say. That's what bothers me. Like, I saw him doing a video where he goes, "Hey, Twitter world, it's yours truly. And just want to say a few things about what's going on in the world today. You know, this whole Roe versus Wade thing, I think they got this wrong. I think women have the right to do what they want, unless it comes to who they date or what they wear. You know what I'm saying, fellas? And what I'm saying is, I don't know where life begins, but I know where it ends." I'm just saying. All right, goodbye. And they're like, "What the hell?
Wait
you
a
can't
minute."
say that." Yeah, like he's still tweaked. So this weekend is a lot of impressions and stories about people who I do impressions of. And then, of course, right here where I'm sitting at is where I live, because this is the music I listen to. This is the music I had originally hoped to be a part of as a kid. I wanted to work in the music business and couldn't get in. So started doing stand-up, and then through stand-up,
a ton of bands,
became friends with everybody.
Yeah.
And I realize now I could never have had all these friendships if I worked in the music business, because everybody is very much in camps.
Yeah.
You know, even in Las Vegas where I live, Corey Taylor lives there. My friend Chris Kale is in the band Five Finger Death Punch. Yeah. Corey's a singer of Slipknot. There's guys from Slash's band that live there. So I've been able to have the best of both worlds, to have a career and have these cool friendships with the musicians that I admired. And I know last time I was here, we talked. I
thought you saw Korn last time. Is that when you were in? Didn't you go see Korn in Nampa?
Yeah, that was February of 2020, right before the world shut down.
2 years ago.
Yeah, that was right before 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago. You know what? As a matter of fact, I know exactly where I was. I flew from Maui, Hawaii, straight to Boise at the end of February. And I performed at so this is like 3 years ago when I was here.
Yeah.
And I stay at a hotel that became condemned shortly after, right by the airport. It was a Wyndham Hotel now.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Now it's a Ramada.
Yeah, I remember talking something about it. Yeah, I remember.
And I get in to the hotel, and I'm exhausted. I've flown from Maui all the way up to Boise, and this woman goes, she goes, "Where'd you come in from?" And I go, where did I come in from? Maui? And she goes, "Maui? You know what? I'm going to get you a room right by the pool, so you'll feel like you're still in Maui." Back. That's what she said, and it was an indoor pool. And I was like, "Oh yeah, this is just like Maui." Yeah. But it was Korn. That's right. I filmed.
Can't remember who they played with. I can't remember now. Because you know the drummer, right?
Ray Monkey, Head, and Jonathan have always been really cool to me. Ray and I stay in touch somewhat semi-regularly. Monkey's been to shows. Head and I were both struggling with drug addiction at the same time and both got sober around the same time. I'm not outing him at all. He's very public.
No, he's very.
Yeah.
I didn't know you had any issues. We've never talked about it before. I'm actually coming up on 20. This will be my 20th year of sobriety.
Oh, you're kidding.
How long have you been? What was your drug or alcohol of choice? I just kind of knowing the whole, just kind of diving in here. I'm just fascinated with like how it started, how it ended is always interesting, and what you were into because everybody's different.
It's funny. I'm obsessed with it too. Somebody turned me on to a book years and years ago called Moments of Clarity. And it's, I want to say it's 40 or 50 stories from people of note, athletes, actors, all describing their moments of clarity. And I'll always remember the one from Tom Arnold. He goes into detail about how psychologically broken he was, that he was doing so many drugs that he would wall himself off in a room of the house that was surrounded by mirrors. And he was so paranoid that he believed that behind the mirrors were a camera crew that were documenting his drug addiction for a future series.
Whoa.
He would spend hours at a time looking in the mirror, talking to himself, and saying, I know you guys are probably wondering what's going on in my head right now.
Whoa.
And he would describe what was going on, thinking that he was being recorded on the other side. So he says that his moment of clarity happened when he snuck out of the house to go party and left for several days, did not answer his phone, and stayed up for several days, and then finally got back to the house, but timed it so he could sneak into the house at 3 o'clock in the morning when Roseanne would not wake up because he knew he would catch hell for it. He gets dropped off in front of his house. His passcode to open up the gate was his birthday, and he couldn't remember his birthday. So he finally just picked up his phone and called Roseanne and said, hey, I'm stranded outside. And he said his moment of clarity was the gates open, Roseanne comes out, puts her arms around him and says, I don't care. I love you. I just love you. And he said, that was my moment of clarity. Unconditional love. It was really powerful. For me, man, did I love cocaine. I remember doing cocaine when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And I remember the very first time saying to my buddy, man, I know people say a lot of bad things about cocaine, but do they ever talk about how good it is? Because this is amazing. This is truly, this is absolutely amazing. And I had the best conversation of my life ever at 14 years old. And I just thought, man, it does not get any better than this. It was just a conversation about nothing. Like most people, I went on a ride trying to follow that high throughout my entire adult life, just slowly started to break down over the years. And then the age of 32, I had a heart attack. The heart attack scared me straight. I was in the hospital for a week. They checked me out of the hospital the day that my flight was taking me back to New York. And I still had like 5 or 6 hours to kill. And I thought, man, you know what I could really use right now after the week that I had is a nice cold beer, because it's been such a stressful week worrying about dying. And then the thought came up like, oh, you know what would be amazing right now? It like really, really would hit the spot if I had some beers and a little bit, like not enough.
Nothing crazy. Yeah,
nothing to have another heart attack, but just a little bit of Coke and just have a buzz. And that was when, for the first time in my life, my brain said to me,
wait a minute,
something's wrong with you. You almost died. That scared me straight for a year and 2 weeks. And then I got in a really toxic relationship, which would lead to me moving into Eddie Van Halen's house.
You were here. Last time you were here, you told us about that. I'm trying to recall.
It was 2004 when I moved into Eddie Van Halen's house. Recording studios, the 5150 studios.
Oh, that's right.
I was introduced to this guy backstage at a Scorpions concert in Los Angeles. And so we exchange phone numbers. We make a plan to go bowling. And he shows up at the bowling alley with Eddie Van Halen. This guy, Maddie, is Eddie Van Halen's assistant. Maddie lives in a guest house on the property of Eddie Van Halen's house. Maddie also runs the 5150 studios. A year and a half, 2 years later, after hanging out with those guys, I end up in this toxic relationship. And Eddie said, dude, back up your stuff. Move in with me. And I was like, really? And he said, yeah, stay as long as you want. The only thing is, don't tell anybody, but the band's getting back together. So it's going to be noisy at night. And I was like, So the only thing I have to worry about is the fact that
Van Halen's playing.
Van Halen's going to be playing in the next room. And he's like, well, I know you're working on your TV show. Because I was working on a new show on NBC at the time called Las Vegas with Alec Baldwin and James Caan. So prior to that, New Year's Eve, that toxic relationship I was in, we had a fight. I was going to see Metallica at the Hard Rock. They were playing at the Joint, a really small room for Metallica. And I was invited into someone's hotel room who was had a lot of money, had a massive pile of cocaine. I had never seen a table filled with cocaine before.
Is it somebody in Metallica?
It might be someone in Metallica. I might have gone to the singer of Metallica after the show to confess that I had just relapsed with a band member of his. And also there were people I was being introduced to who I respected and admired, and they were all doing it. Socially, I felt pressure. So I called the girl that I was dating that I was in the bad relationship with, and what do you want? Look, I know you're mad at me, but can I just talk to you? Because there's something I really need to talk to you about. And she said, what? What do you want? And I said, I'm thinking about relapsing tonight. And she goes, you know what? F you. I don't care. You're on your own. And she hung up on me. And it's completely my decision that I said, I'm going to show her. And I made that decision for myself. And then I relapsed a year and 2 weeks after the heart attack. I had the heart attack on December 14th of 2002. A year and 2 weeks later, December 31st of 2003, I'm feeling wobbly. I fall off. And then I just go through the entire year of 2004, just continuously get worse and worse and worse and worse. The evening of December 13th, 2004, I'm at a Steel Panther show. Midnight, I look at my phone and I realize, oh, wow, it's December 14th. Man, I had a heart attack 2 years ago. Drug addicts always have a plan on how they're going to clean up. My plan was to go all the way through the new year and get sober on January 1st because January 1st is an easy day to remember. Like, I would never remember the day that I changed my life. And I'm sitting there going, why am I doing this? Why am I pushing myself to get in for another hard 2 weeks of my life when I've had a heart attack and I'm taking care of my mom? I was paying my mom's bills for 20 years. And I was circling around opportunities where I literally could take care of her for the rest of her life. It just hit me like, wow, this is selfish. And for the first time in my life, I had half a beer in my hand, I hovered it over a garbage can, and I just watched it fall. Ooh. And I remember even as it fell, I went, like I'm watching, like I'm throwing beer away. Like I threw half a beer away, and I never drank, never did drugs again. It's been 18 years.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
The first year that I got clean, sadly, I had a lot of motivation because 7 of my friends died in the first year that I got clean. All comedians, drug overdoses, 3 drinking and driving car accidents. The first one was in March of 2004. Mitch Hedberg, who was my first roommate. The news broke on April Fool's Day, so a lot of people thought it was an April Fool's joke. 6 more friends died. Each one of those deaths, sadly, was a reminder that I can't negotiate with myself anymore. I can't go, you know what? Maybe I just need to just not party as hard. There are so many comedians, musicians, athletes, actors who are sober because they just...
Corey Taylor, you mentioned him before. He's been sober a long time.
Yeah, Corey's a sober dude.
Most of Korn. I think almost all of them.
Yep. Dude, I don't know if I should say this or not, but there's a band that sings about cocaine that all are completely sober. They've all been sober for 20 years, and they sing about cocaine.
Is it Buck Cherry or Cabo?
It is Buck Cherry, but I think they're open about this. Right?
Yeah, I've talked to Josh before. I'm pretty sure he's been sober for decades. I'm pretty sure.
I hope I'm not outing that guy.
No, I don't think so.
Because we've all seen the damage that can be done to our heroes that we grew up watching, that we used to admire for being wasted all the time. And they don't age well if they age. So all the warnings are there, and all the visual evidence is there for us. So the most important thing in my life was getting ahead of my addictions. It's what saved my life. So it's a tough thing, but if anyone who's listening to this is relating to anything that I'm saying, you just have to love yourself enough to save your own life. I spent my formative years in Tucson, and a guy that I grew up with, we partied together. He was the first guy I ever knew who went to rehab. And I remember thinking like, wow, you're going to rehab? What, you have a problem with drugs? I'm like, it's always a reflection on you. Because you're like, I do drugs with you. Am I a drug addict? Like, you know, it makes other people feel weird when somebody goes to rehab. And then when he gets out and we're doing coke together.
No.
I'm looking at him going, wow, you are an addict. Look at the way here. Give me that straw. Give me that straw. What are you doing?
Look at you. You're just out of rehab.
Yeah, jeez. Give me that straw. Let me snort all of this, you weirdo, you psycho. And that guy, on one of his New Year's Eves in his 20s, he goes and just smokes crack alone in the desert to celebrate New Year's Eve.
Wow.
And he's alone in the desert past midnight, and he's smoking crack. And then he looks up in the sky and just says a prayer. He just says, if there is a God out there, please help me. And he said a miracle happened, that in that moment when he did that, for the first time in his life, he had felt like such a piece of shit for so many years, that for the first time in his life, he felt hope. He said he never had that feeling. He always felt hopeless. He never felt hopeful. And he had this feeling of hope for the first time in his life. And it was a real miracle. And he started getting treatment. He started going to meetings, and he got clean. And he's been clean for longer than I have. He's been clean for over 20 plus years, has an amazing job.
That's great.
Has a great wife. I mean, everything in his life is awesome. And I guess about 5-10 years ago, he went back to Tucson to visit family, and he decided he wanted to go to that spot where he had that miracle happen. And he's driving, but it's all developed. And right where the spot was is an entrance to a massive brand new apartment complex. And the name of the apartment complex is the Spanish word for miracle.
No way.
Yeah. It's profound. Man, I don't know if any of this is going to help me sell tickets to a comedy
Greg is
show.
a comedian who does impressions. Did you guys hear those two dudes talking about smoking crack in the desert? That guy's hilarious.
Oh, man, we got to get tickets to this show. This guy's fucking awesome.
But we can do some of your comedy. I always love your impressions. We did the Lars. You do a great Tracy Morgan. You talked about Tom Arnold. I know you do Tom Arnold. Your Gene Simmons is the best.
Well, the Gene Simmons, and forgive me if I've already said some of this to you, there's a couple things. One is that my friend who named John Bianelli, he works for Aerosmith. He's the guy who taught me how to do the Gene Simmons impression. And he taught me how to do the impression by saying, this is like 25 years ago. He goes, dude, if you want to do a Gene Simmons impression, watch Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. It's the exact same voice. And if you watch Benjamin Netanyahu, it's hi, this is Benjamin Netanyahu from Kiss. It's the same voice. That, by the way, is how my friend John and I would talk to each other over the years. We would, every time my friend John picks up the phone and go, hello. Hi, John, this is Gene Simmons from Kiss. And he'll go, hey, what's up, Gene? Not much. Listen, I hope you don't mind, but Aerosmith's entire catalog is available for $49.95 at kissonline.com. Oh, that's great, Gene. Well, something weird happens 15 years ago when Kiss and Aerosmith put a tour together. And John, my buddy who works for Aerosmith, is in the front office of Vindaloo Music, which is Aerosmith's management office. The receptionist goes, John, it's a call for you. And he goes, yeah, put it through. And he picks up the phone and he goes, hello. And he hears, hi, John, this is Gene Simmons from Kiss. And he goes, what's up, you fat Jew bastard? And there's a long pause and he hears, I'm sorry. And there's another long pause and he goes, Craig? No, it's not Craig Gass. It's Gene Simmons from Kiss. Listen. And he went right into his question. Didn't even face him. I like doing bad impressions. Like when I get a call to do an audition for Family Guy or for Howard Stern or even for Disney, I'll work on it. And then when I think I'm close, I'll call my friends that I grew up with in New York and I'll go, hey, tell me if this sounds right. And my friends that I grew up with in New York are really critical. I want honesty, and they'll help me out. But I'm very thin-skinned, so it just turns into a much longer conversation because I'll try to weasel my way out of it. Like my friends will go, no, it doesn't sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'll be like, dude, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger after a bad car accident. And I'll only say that so I can get away with something lame like, yeah, Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger jerking off? No. Dude, doesn't sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger after a bad car accident. There's some impressions I just can't do. I can't do a Mark Wahlberg impression. But what I can do is I can do something I call out of breath Mark Wahlberg, which is just simply... That's half the impression. By the way, I could teach this to anybody.
Yeah, I like it.
Heavy breathing, that's half the impression. The other half is you got to say a few words at a time, but the words have to be distressful because for some reason Mark Wahlberg's always stressed out. Guys, are you serious? There's a car accident outside. You got to help me get the bodies out. Arnold Schwarzenegger's in a car accident. Come on, feel it. Feel the vibration. I did that a few weeks ago on stage in Nashville, Tennessee, and the girl in the front row goes, "What movie is that from?" And I was like, "Every movie. Like, what? Have you never seen a Mark Wahlberg?"
You got to do Arnold Schwarzenegger, but like he's coming up to your car and you've just been in an accident and he's asking you for like your information. Like, I need your registration.
Yeah, you know what? Arnold's in the car.
Like,
and Mark Wahlberg's the cop. Hey, buddy, I need your ID and your registration. Come on, give me what you got. That's a great idea. My God, you just closed the premise. That is perfect.
My head's hurting because I can picture the movie of like, there's a car crash and Arnold's in it and Mark Wahlberg's there. Oh
every
God.
Transformers movie is just Mark Wahlberg going, "Is that your car parked outside? Because your car just turned into a giant robot." Like, yeah. I have a terrible, terrible story to tell you. Terrible. That led to one of the most amazing moments ever in my stand-up, which was that I was on stage in Nashville. I was talking about how much I love Morgan Freeman. A woman in the back of the room stands up and goes, "This isn't funny!" And the whole room just froze. And I went, "What's not funny?" And she yelled out, "Morgan Freeman is a rapist!" And the whole crowd froze.
Whoa.
Yeah. The question that was on everybody's mind, I went, "The fuck?" Because that is just not a normal thing to hear at a comedy. Like, you don't go to a Marvel superhero movie and hear somebody behind you in the theater go, "Batman, fuck my mama!" Like, what does that? But she yells out again and she says, "Morgan Freeman is a bad person." And she walks out of the room and her husband stayed. And he was in the front row staring at me while he's eating meatballs.
What?
It was the most odd thing because it was one of the items on the menu and he's eating meatballs and staring at me. The whole room noticed it and the room got dead silent. And the only way I knew how to get out of that moment, the only way that made sense was to narrate it as Morgan Freeman. It just made sense.
Sexual predator Morgan Freeman.
Sexual predator Morgan Freeman. He was staring at me. I'm staring at him. And I just went, "My, oh my. Those meatballs must have been delicious because he wasn't leaving." And I don't know what his name was, but I kept calling him Andy Dufresne. Was not going to let his wife dictate how the night was going to go. And then the guy started smiling. I could hear him laughing. "Well, looks like the mood was starting to change." The guy hung out afterwards.
Did she really think it was Morgan Freeman? Was she thinking of someone else? Or
I don't know. I got the feeling that she wasn't well.
Gotcha, yeah.
You know, but man, she gave me a gift by saying something so foul and so bizarre that it went from being the most tension I've ever felt in a room to the greatest relief of tension I've ever felt in a room. But yeah, impressions have always been a fun thing to do. I've always loved doing Tracy Morgan because Tracy sounds like everybody grew up with, and there's so many Tracy Morgan stories of him just being playful. That's crazy. That's crazy. Sam Kinison. Sam was... there used to be a late night show on NBC. The lineup for late night television on NBC was The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, Late Night with David Letterman, and then later with Bob Costas. It was a 30-minute show where Bob would just sit one-on-one. He starts out the interview by saying, "Sam, I used to watch you back in the early 80s before you became famous. And back then, your entire act was based on that day's obituaries. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what? This guy's funny, but he's too dark and he's never going to make it." And Sam just was like floored that he remembered that. And he goes, yeah, I remember that. Wow. Sam Kinison apparently used to walk on stage with today's obituaries. Hey, folks, my name's Sam Kinison. I want to thank you guys for coming out. Thanks for supporting stand-up comedy. I'll tell you a couple people that you won't be seeing here tonight. You just open up the newspaper.
Go through the paper.
Like Esther Goldberg. No, she didn't catch the bus. She's not here. But apparently, if you want to see her work, apparently it's going to be on display on Sunday at Evergreen Mortuary because these jokes are dark. Oh! That is what most of the show is. Impressions.
Stories.
And stories.
Because you've toured with Slipknot and Metallica.
I got to open for Metallica. I actually got to open for Metallica, and it was a result of a prank phone call that I did. I was going to St. Louis to do some shows. And a guy who I used to work with at K-Rock in New York when I was doing mornings with Howard, a guy named Woody, was now doing afternoon drive at a rock station in St. Louis. Yeah. So Woody's out in L.A. now doing mornings.
Yep.
And so I get out to St. Louis, and Woody already tells me, hey, when you get to St. Louis, you can hang out for the whole show. Just come in. You can stay for the whole show. And I was like, all right, cool. So I get into town. I got my rental car. I'm driving to the station. And something crazy happens when I find his station. He has Lars Ulrich on the phone from his house in San Francisco. And so Woody keeps him on without playing any songs, without playing any commercials, and without a delay. Every fifth word is a doozy. It's a big one. There's mother effers going out on the air. It's crazy. I don't know why I'm editing myself now after everything you said, but it's really profane. I get to the radio station. He's still on the air. I go past security, get into the building. He's still on the air. I get in reception. He's still on the air. They bring me to the studio. He's still on the air. I walk in the studio and I go, do you still want me on? And he goes, I can't get rid of him. I don't know how to get rid of him. So we hatched a plan on how to get rid of Lars Ulrich while Lars was talking to St. Louis. And then my buddy goes, he goes, come over, have a seat over here. Hey, Lars, that is crazy. Yeah. That is, wow. Let me just cut you off for 1 second. Now, we have Lars Ulrich, the drummer of Metallica, is on the phone right now. And Lars, you're not going to believe this, but we have a couple guests that are in the studio, and he starts pointing me towards a microphone, and I go, no. And he goes, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons are in the studio right now, and apparently they want to talk to you. And Lars goes, is that really Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons? It is. Guys, say hi. Hey, Lars, this is Paul Stanley, and this is Gene Simmons from Kiss. I'm going to get right to the point, Lars. A lot of people steal from Kiss. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. But on the new Metallica record, Saint Anger, you've gone a little too far. I'll give you a perfect example. I want you to name one song on the new Metallica record that you think is original. And he goes, I think all the songs are pretty original. Right, but if you had to name one song, Lars, what would it be? I guess if I had to pick one song, it would be, and he gave me a song title, and I said, that's a great song, Lars, but I'm going to be honest with you. I liked it a lot better the first time I heard it when it was called Beth. And he went, how do you hear Beth in the middle of a That doesn't make any sense. And he started arguing with a fake Paul Stanley and a fake Gene Simmons when my buddy Woody goes, hey, Lars, sorry to cut you guys off. Lars, we have somebody that wants to say hello to you that just walked in the studio from next door. We have a talk radio station next door who has a movie critic that every Friday he does movie reviews with real movie stars for new movie releases, and he has Christopher Walken as his guest, and Christopher Walken wanted to say hi. Do you mind saying hello to him? Is that really Christopher Walken? It is. Chris, say hi. Hi, Lars. I love Metallica because I love cocaine. I love cocaine. And then he's talking to a fake Christopher Walken. He's still arguing with a fake Paul Stanley and a fake Gene Simmons. At one point, I started doing Phil Anselmo for some reason because there was some kind of war going on with Phil Anselmo and Metallica at the time and going, hey, Lars, check it out. And he thinks he's really talking to Phil Anselmo. And then my buddy goes, hey, Lars, Sam Kinison just walked in and he wants to say hi to you. And I go, hey, Lars, I don't know if you remember this, but we did cocaine back in 1987 until you stole my blow. Oh! And Lars goes, didn't that guy die like 15 years ago? And they go, yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then my buddy finally revealed, Lars, this is a comedian that's joining us right now. His name's Craig Gass, and he's performing in St. Louis this weekend. And Lars goes, dude, are you going to be there when we get to St. Louis to do our show? And I said, I live in New York, so I will not be here. And he said, well, the next time you come out to a show, I'd love to hang out with you. And I was like,
Yes.
I go, yeah, I would love to hang out with you, Lars.
I'm on my way.
I love you. And that in itself, I thought, man, that was the coolest moment ever. But it got crazier when I got home because the producer of our show, of the Howard Stern show, Gary Dell'Abate, walked up to me a week later and he said,
hey, so I got kind of a funny story. So somebody from Elektra Records is trying to get in touch with you. Apparently, the guys in Metallica are trying to find you for some reason, man. You better give this guy a call.
And so I got this phone number. I called this guy from Elektra Records, and he said, I don't know who you are, but Lars Ulrich wanted me to call you. Apparently, you do voices, and we're doing a promotion in a couple of weeks in Denver, Colorado. Lars is going to take over a late night time slot at a radio station in Denver, where it's going to be called Late Night with Lars, and we're syndicating this to 20 markets. He wants you to do impressions and co-host the show with him. Sight unseen, they bought me a plane ticket to come to Denver and hang out with Lars, and then Lars and I became friends, and then a few months later, they announced they were going to do a special one-off show in New York City at the Bowery Ballroom, holds 1,000 people, and I called Lars and said, I left him a message and said, if Metallica had any balls, you would let a stand-up comedian open up the show. Lars called me back. I still have the message. Boop. Hey, man, it's Lars. Yeah, I got your message. And I talked to James and Kirk and some of the other guys. And yeah, come down and do a couple 15, 20 minutes of whatever it is you do. And let's have some fun, huh? And then that ended up being my first gig opening for a rock band, which led to opening for System of a Down, which led to opening for a Alice in Chains tour, which led to opening for a Corey Taylor tour recently, the Struts, awesome. Sugar Ray, on and on and on and on. So yeah, that was the band that gave me my first chance opening for a band. Man, that is more like what you're going to see this weekend.
I like it.
At the Lounge at the End of the Universe. So come out and
Thursday, Friday, Saturday shows?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. All the information is at loungeboise.com, or you can go to my website, getgas.com, getgas with 2 S's.com. Come out to one of the shows, and we're going to have some fun.
Good luck in Australia, man. Always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for stopping by today.
Thank you, Forrest.